Ever experienced a moment when your eyes deceive you, making you see things that aren't there? Welcome to the captivating world of optical illusions. These are images or designs that playfully trick our minds into seeing something different from what's actually presented. They are the grand masters of deception, bending the laws of perception and challenging our understanding of reality. What's fascinating about optical illusions is that they reveal how our brains process visual information, and how sometimes they can get it hilariously wrong. Today we'll be delving into some of the most mind-boggling illusions that have left even the brightest minds scratching their heads. From the classics that have stood the test of time, to the modern marvels that continue to intrigue, every illusion tells a unique story of our perception and the power it holds over us. Are you ready to challenge your perception? Let's dive into the first illusion. The first illusion that we'll explore is known as the impossible trident. This mindbender presents an object that appears to have three cylindrical prongs at one end but mysteriously transforms into two rectangular prongs at the other. It's an impossible object because it can't exist in three-dimensional space, yet our brains insist on perceiving it as a coherent whole. This illusion takes advantage of our brain's tendency to interpret two-dimensional drawings as three-dimensional objects, creating a conflict between what we see and what we know to be possible. Moving on, let's delve into the Poggendorf illusion. Named after the German physicist Johann Poggendorf, this illusion presents a straight line interrupted by an obscuring shape. When asked to continue the line on the other side of the shape, most people misjudge the angle. This illusion demonstrates how our brains sometimes struggle with angles and straight lines, especially when they're obscured or broken up. And finally, the third illusion for this segment is the Ebbinghaus illusion. Here, two circles of the same size are surrounded by other circles of different sizes, which tricks our brains into perceiving one central circle as larger than the other. This illusion plays with our perception of relative size. It showcases how our brains use surrounding context to make judgments about size, which can sometimes lead to fascinating misinterpretations. These three illusions, the impossible trident, the Poggendorf illusion, and the Ebbinghaus illusion, demonstrate how our brains process visual information and fill in gaps based on assumptions, past experiences, and surrounding context. They remind us that what we perceive isn't always a true representation of reality, but rather a constructed interpretation based on our brain's best guess. Just when you thought you understood how your perception works, these illusions prove otherwise. Let's move on to the next set. Next up is an illusion that will make you question your color perception, the Munker-White illusion. This illusion is an intriguing one. It involves two identical colors that appear different due to the contrast with their surrounding colors. It's a powerful demonstration of how our brain processes colors in relation to their neighbors, and not in isolation. You might find it hard to believe, but the colors you're seeing are actually the same. Your brain, however, interprets them differently based on their immediate surroundings. Moving on to our next illusion, we have the checker shadow illusion. This illusion was created by Edward H. Adelson, a professor at MIT. It plays with our perception of light and shadow. The illusion consists of a checkerboard with a green cylinder casting a shadow. Two squares, one in the light and one in the shadow, appear to be different shades of gray, but they are, in fact, the same color. It's a fascinating example of how our brain uses light and shadow to understand the world around us, and sometimes it gets it wrong. Finally, for our third illusion in this segment, we delve into the Bezold effect. This illusion was named after a German professor of meteorology, Wilhelm von Bezold, who discovered that a color can dramatically change in appearance if it is swapped with a different background color. In this illusion, you'll see a pattern of colors. When the background color changes, the perceived color of the pattern also appears to change. It's a clear example of how our perception of color can be heavily influenced by other colors around it. Fascinating, isn't it? How easily our brain can be tricked. These illusions show us that what we see is not always the truth, but rather a perception constructed by our brain based on the information it receives. It's a humbling reminder of the power of perception and how it shapes our reality. But don't let your brain rest just yet. We still have more illusions to explore. Let's continue our exploration. Now let's move on to an illusion that will make static images appear as though they're moving, the rotating snakes illusion. This mind-bending illusion, often involving a series of alternating light and dark snake patterns, creates an impression of movement. But how? It's all thanks to our brain's inherent desire for order and understanding. As our eyes dart back and forth, the brain tries to process the contrasting colors and the curved lines, resulting in a perceived motion. Next on our list is the Hermann grid illusion. Picture this: a grid of white lines against a black background, with ghostly gray blobs appearing at the intersections when you look indirectly. It's a classic example of lateral inhibition where light receptors in our eyes respond more strongly to bright points surrounded by dark areas. This creates an imbalance in our perception, causing the non-existent gray blobs to materialize. Finally, we delve into the Zollner illusion. This illusion messes with our perception of parallel lines, making them appear as if they're converging or diverging. What's the trick here? It's the shorter lines cutting across the longer ones, creating an angle that tricks our brain into thinking the parallel lines aren't parallel at all. This illusion is a testament to the power of context and perspective in shaping our visual perception. Each of these illusions, from rotating snakes to ghostly grids and deceptive lines, showcases how easily our brains can be fooled. They reveal the fascinating interplay between our eyes and our brains, where what we see isn't always what's truly there. It's a tantalizing reminder that perception is not always reality, and that our experience of the world is shaped by more than what meets the eye. Still with me? Let's march forward to the final set of illusions. Get ready to have your mind blown with our next illusion, the Penrose Triangle. The Penrose Triangle, a masterpiece by Lionel and Roger Penrose, is a classic example of an impossible object. This illusion is a triangular figure that appears to be a solid object, made up of 3 straight beams. But here's the twist: the beams are arranged in a way that they could never meet if they were real solid objects. They seem to be simultaneously in front and behind each other, which defies the principles of Euclidean geometry. It's a paradox that exists only in 2 dimensions, and it's this contradiction that gives the Penrose Triangle its mystique, fooling our brains into seeing something that cannot exist in the real world. Next, we have the Fraser spiral illusion, created by British psychologist James Fraser in the early 20th century. Now, believe it or not, there are no spirals in this illusion, only a series of concentric circles. The illusion of a spiral is created by the overlapping black and white segments that distort your perception. The illusion plays with our brain's interpretation of the image, fooling us into seeing a spiral where none exist. Finally, we delve into the cafe wall illusion. Named after a tiled wall of a cafe in Bristol where it was first observed, this illusion makes parallel lines appear slanted. The alternating light and dark tiles, with the gray lines in between, create an illusion that the lines are not parallel. It's a brilliant demonstration of how our brains perceive contrast and brightness. Intriguing, isn't it? How these simple images can play such tricks on our mind. The Penrose Triangle defies geometry, the Fraser spiral illusion challenges our perception of shapes, and the cafe wall illusion questions our understanding of lines. These illusions reveal the fascinating ways our minds interpret the world around us, reminding us that what we see is not always what it seems. Let's wrap up with a quick summary. Optical illusions are indeed a fascinating aspect of our visual perception. We've delved into the world of 15 mind-boggling illusions, each uniquely demonstrating the intriguing ways our brain interprets visual data, often fooling us into seeing something that's not really there. From static images that appear to move to color illusions that challenge our perception of hues, we've seen how our mind attempts to make sense of complex visual stimuli. We've explored illusions that play with our perception of size and distance, demonstrating how context can drastically alter our interpretation. And we've encountered illusions that reveal the inherent subjectivity of our visual experience, reminding us that what we see is not an absolute reality, but a construct of our mind. Remember, seeing is not always believing. Thank you for joining us on this intriguing journey of optical illusions. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.